So, the Nintendo Switch 2 is almost upon us next week as I'm recording this. A few weeks ago, I did a deep dive on the launch details of the system, talking about the good, bad, and ugly. For me personally, despite the controversies, that's been outweighed by the quality of the games and the relatively powerful hardware for a handheld anyway. So I'm still excited about the Switch 2. However, there is one key component that really dampens the mood, taking me from a 9 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10 on the hype scale. And that is the seemingly incoming death of physical media as we know it. Because you see, when I made that deep dive video, it wasn't entirely known how many of the physical releases would actually be game key cards. I even said back then that I was pretty sure that Yakuza 0 Director's Cut was gonna be a true physical copy, and then right when we went to publish that video, that got immediately debunked by the fact that actually most of the third-party games are those game key cards. The only ones that are true physical so far is like Cyberpunk 2077, Daemon X Machina, Rune Factory, and of course all the first-party Nintendo games are going to be true physicals. The Switch 2 editions are going to be true physicals as well. But other than that, that's it guys. It even just came out that Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D remake is getting a Switch 2 version, but it's going to be a game key card as well. Even Capcom games are game key cards. Yeah, Street Fighter 6, Kunitsugami, all game key cards. Which makes me freaking terrified for any future Mega Man games should it happen, that those are going to be game key cards too. And you would think that the game key cards would at least mean we no longer have to see those download code in a box releases, but no, at least at launch, even here in the Switch 2 era, we ain't safe from that either, because releases like Split Fiction has a download code in a box. That's messed up, man. They literally said, no, we ain't playing games. You don't get a cartridge to play pretend with. For the uninitiated, game key cards are like a download authenticator that once you put it into your Switch 2, it will start downloading the game. It's not tied to any account, so you can still lend it out or sell it even. Other than that, it's still a digital copy at heart. So they carry that big fear that when the eShop servers go down like 30 years from now or something, that those cartridges are going to become completely useless. We've all known this was coming for a long time. Digital is just becoming more and more popular as the years go by, since it is more convenient for the average user to just load up something on their game console or watch a movie on a streaming service, as opposed to having to put in a CD or cartridge every time you want to play it, and then you have to store it in your home somewhere, and that takes up a lot of space. Furthermore, publishers really like digital because, one, they don't have to pay to make physical copies and cut into their profit margins, and two, they can control your access to the game for any reason, whether they decide to revoke your license or delist the game off the digital storefront for any reason. We've already seen certain publishers saying, hey guys, you don't own that game that you're buying. You're only buying a license to play the game. And we can take that away from you if we feel like it. And yeah, that's pretty scummy. Pricing plays a factor into that too because, well, it's harder to charge full price for a game when you know that people can find the game elsewhere on the secondhand market for much cheaper. And for example, if you buy a used copy at GameStop, that money goes to GameStop, not the publisher or developer. So definitely they want to incentivize you to buy digital or new copies only. And to be fair, it is working out for them because, you know, in recent years, digital sales are becoming massively popular, basically eclipsing physical sales at this point. Unfortunately, the writing has been on the wall for a long time now, especially as more and more younger generations of people grow up without knowing the significance behind having a physical copy. then is physical media just for us old farts that have fond memories of putting the game into our retro console and enjoying an evening with just that one game for hours on end? Sure, but buying physical can also be a statement. Like, hey, if I am gonna pay my hard-earned dollars for this game, I'm keeping it, okay? I'm not gonna let anyone tell me otherwise. And it can also be a preservation effort on your part, because when it comes to digital media, the future is always uncertain when the online servers eventually shut down and you can no longer re-download your game. With Nintendo specifically, we've already seen the Wii shop, the Nintendo 3DS eShop, and the Wii U eShop all go down. You can no longer buy new games from those stores. However, for now at least, you can still re-download any games you bought previously. I can confirm because I just re-downloaded Pokemon Bank on my 3DS the other week. So at least your purchases are still accessible to you, which is great. But again, the big fear is one day, even that ability is going to be taken away from you because servers don't last forever. So to sum up the pros and cons of physical media, at least as it pertains to the Nintendo Switch, the pros are, you can lend the game to anyone, you can sell the game to anyone, the game can still work decades down the road, even when those online servers go down, there is no download required, and outside of updates and DLC, the base game itself, you don't have to install it, you just insert the cartridge and start playing. Honestly, that alone feels like magic compared to PlayStation and Xbox these days, since those consoles always have you install the game from your CD first. And to debunk a common misconception, for the vast majority of PlayStation games at least, all the data is there on the disc. You can play the game without connecting online. It's only recently that we've had releases like, especially some of the Xbox ones like Indiana Jones and Doom: The Dark Ages, that take more of that Nintendo game key card approach where only a small amount of the game is actually on the disc and then you have to download everything else. But a ton of other games are actually all there on the disc. I'll point you to doesitplay.org for information on which games exactly have it all on the disc or not. But anyway, yeah, for any of the true Nintendo physical copies, no need to take up any precious storage space on your microSD card or internal storage, which is really nice because, you know, there's not a lot of space on those Switches. Even the Switch 2 is only going to have 256 gigabytes, and really, how long is that going to last you as games get bigger and bigger? And not to mention the fact that the Switch 2 library so far is 90% digital, but we'll get back to that in a minute. And lastly, for the pros, for physical, we have a tangible object you can hold and display in your collection. That's a lot of pros, but as of anything, there are a couple of cons, so let's go over those real quick. Cons for physical. The cartridge has to be inserted every time you want to play, and that's the big con with physical that's kind of annoying, and that's why a lot of people go to digital because it's always there on your system ready to go, assuming you have it installed. But furthermore, there's the outside of the game factors, like you could lose or misplace your cartridge, or the cartridge could become damaged and unplayable. Whew, oh no. I know it's a no duh moment, but I had to put it on there because it is the reality of having a physical object. For example, while I was moving a couple of years ago, I've somehow misplaced my copy of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and I'm pretty sad about that one. But then on the other end, let's talk about digital pros and cons. Right off the bat, our list of pros are pretty small, but they are some big pros to be fair. 1, the game is always ready to play, assuming it's installed, and you can still lend the game to a second Switch or Nintendo Switch Online family member using the virtual card feature. And I guess we can add that we don't have to worry about losing the game as long as we have access to our account, you know, don't forget our password or anything, that's nice. But then for the cons, we have download is required. It does take up storage space. and you cannot re-download the game when the online servers shut down. Basically, digital is more convenient than physical just because you always have it there on your system, and that's why a lot of people go for that. But those cons are some really big cons, so that's up to you if the cost is worth it. Although, to be fair, we don't exactly have a choice coming into the Switch 2 third-party lineup, thanks to the introduction of the game keycards. So, pros and cons of the game keycard. As we talked about before, you can lend the game to anyone, since it's not tied to an account, as well as you can sell the game to anyone. And yeah, you can at least play pretend that it's a physical copy and put it up on your shelf, I guess. But it feels kind of hollow knowing that there's no actual game data on the cartridge. And then we have just a whole lot of cons here, because we have all the cons from both the physical and digital. Oh dear. So yeah, cons. The cartridge has to be inserted every time you want to play. Download is required. It takes up storage space. You cannot re-download the game when the server shut down. You could lose or misplace your cartridge, or the cartridge could become damaged and unplayable. Yikes. And that's why, for me personally, I think for any of the game key card releases on the Switch 2, I'm just gonna treat it like a digital copy and just go the digital route. Because at least with digital, it's already there on your system, ready to play. Whereas the game key card has all the cons of a physical copy, but none of the pros of a digital copy. And that's because you still have to insert it into your system every time you want to play. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not really someone that sells my games, like, ever. I like holding on to my games, okay? So, maybe if you are someone that plays a game and then just sells it after they're done, if being able to lend it out or sell it is a big deal to you, then maybe game keycard is the way to go. But for me, I think I'd rather just have the convenience of digital, since game keycards are just digital disguised as physical anyways. But guys, I would like to hear your thoughts in the comments. Are you team digital or team game keycard? Obviously, I would prefer to be team physical when I can, and I will be for the Nintendo first party games and the few goated third party developers that actually do a full physical release. But outside of that, unfortunately we don't got much of a choice here. So yeah, are you team digital or team game keycard? What would you rather get if given the choice? Let me know down below. While you guys are doing that, we're going to tackle the question, why the heck are there so many game keycards anyways? It seems to go back to that rumor that Nintendo is only offering 2 different kinds of Switch 2 cartridges. You got a super duper tiny one that only really exists to host the game key cards, and the other option is a 64GB cartridge. And it has been confirmed that Cyberpunk 2077 is going to fit all in that 64GB, including the DLC expansion, which is really cool. Rune Factory is also going to be on a 64GB cartridge, which is interesting because there is no way in heck that game is that big. In fact, on the Switch 1, those games historically have been like less than 10GB, so yeah, it is definitely very strange. Which does support the fact that Nintendo may not be offering other size options for developers to use. And of course, the bigger the cartridge is, the more expensive it's going to be to produce. And that seems to be one of the key factors why most third-party developers are going for the game key cards, is because they don't want to cut into their profit margins. If given the choice, publishers would rather make the most money that they can while still having shelf presence in stores, rather than satisfy the needs of what may be a smaller part of their audience. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the whole only 2 options thing is a really odd decision coming from Nintendo. Maybe the thinking is that most games are going to be really big anyway, so may as well just have 64GB there. But yeah, it's very weird. And I have seen comments online saying that it's all Nintendo's fault for not offering more options. And my take on that is yes, sure, they should offer more options, but let's not discount the fact that most likely third-party developers are really pushing hard for the idea of a game key card. Because at the end of the day, companies like to make money, and they make the most money from digital purchases rather than physical. So a hybrid release that meets in the middle for both consumers seems like a win-win for them. You're still going to see the game cases when you walk into your local retailer, and they make more money. Simple as that. At the very least, with game key cards, it is easily identifiable that it is such. You're not going to have to guess, because if you just look at the bottom part of the case, it's going to clearly say game key card on it. If that disclaimer is not there on the bottom of the box, most likely it's a true physical, so you're good. Now, I explained the reasons why publishers really like the game key card idea, but on the flip side of things, I've talked about how Cyberpunk 2077 is going to be all on the cartridge, including the DLC. And in a cool twist, they seem to be one of the few third-party developers that are actually championing a physical copy. So in an interview, we have Jan Rosner, the Vice President of Business Development at CD Projekt Red, going on record saying things like, Nintendo at physical retail is still strong, and retail is, in general, not going anywhere. Physical releases are especially important for the Nintendo audience. I would say for any audience, but sure, Nintendo, whatever. He also said, do not underestimate the physical edition. It's not going anywhere, and Nintendo players are very appreciative of physical editions that are done right. I mean, I sure am appreciative of that. In this vast sea of game keycard releases, it's nice to know that at least someone still cares about physical. Of course, at the end of the day, you could just take this as PR speak, kind of taking advantage of the whole situation to get more sales, but even then, it's still pretty cool on their parts that they have the whole freaking game expansion included on the cartridge, and I think that's worth supporting alone. Not to mention, there's been talk that Cyberpunk 2077 may be the best looking version on a handheld device so far, even above a Steam Deck, so I think Cyberpunk could be a very popular release on the Switch too, as it should be. But guys, I think that's where I'm going to end it for this video. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. It's very nice to get this all off my chest finally. I've been thinking about this topic pretty much ever since the game key card showed up right after that Switch 2 Direct on April 2nd. And I will still maintain that even being a doom and gloomer about all of this, I'm still excited about the Switch 2 itself. I think it's going to be a pretty cool system at the end of the day. It's just going to suck looking at my game shelf and only seeing like Mario Kart, Cyberpunk. Unless you're someone that got the whole bundle with the digital Mario Kart, then Mario Kart won't be there. So it'll just be Cyberpunk, maybe Rune Factory, and if you ever do decide to get a game key card, I guess you got those. But for me, no, not gonna bother. So I'm only going to have like 2 games on my shelf at launch, which ain't a lot, since everything else is gonna be digital for me at this point. Yeah, that's a bit of a bummer, but hey guys, I do have some neat plans for the Switch 2 launch. I am going to be getting it on launch day, so I'm going to be doing a special stream with a focus on testing backwards compatibility for the Mega Man games, because, you know, just a casual reminder, this is a Mega Man channel, and we did get the unfortunate report from Nintendo that apparently Mega Man Legacy Collection 1 is suffering in-game issues when played on a Switch 2. Funnily enough, just as I'm recording this, Nintendo has updated their backwards compatibility website for Switch 2 with some new information. It seems the biggest changes is that list of in-game issues is shrinking a little bit. There's not as much on there anymore, but that's because a lot of those got moved to this new section that only had a couple of games before, but now it has a lot more. And this is Switch games with issues that are planned to be addressed by launch or shortly after. So now we have games like Gal Guardians Demon Purge from Inti Crates that is confirmed to be getting an update in order to resolve the issue. Very nice. What's not very nice for us Mega Man fans is that if we go back to the in-game compatibility issues, Mega Man Legacy Collection 1 is still there with the vague "this issue is being investigated" text. So it seems like going into the Switch 2 launch, this game is still going to have issues running on the Switch 2, and there's no word from Capcom or Digital Eclipse if there's going to be an update to fix this. Maybe there will be an update at some point, but I don't know. It has been a while since Legacy Collection came out. It is a bit of an older collection. It was done by Digital Eclipse, which Digital Eclipse has not worked on a Mega Man collection since. So maybe this is Capcom's call to action to make their own Legacy Collection 1, essentially. Release Mega Man 1 through 6 again. And then that's going to be the new Capcom test for Mega Man 12. Oh dear. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them, I guess. So, with that launch stream, I'm going to take the time to investigate what exactly that entails. And while we're at it, we're going to test some other Mega Man games to see if they run better or not. Maybe they'll run really bad and maybe they'll be unplayable. Who knows? That's what we're going to find out. One thing that would be nice to find is if the Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection will have faster loading times. Because that is definitely something I noticed going from PC to Switch, is that the Switch version in particular has some slower loading times when going from game to game or going back to the menu and stuff like that. It's not game breaking or anything, but it's weird. So that would be nice to see if the extra horsepower from the Switch 2 helps that at all. Alright guys, thank you all so much for watching, and thank you to all our channel members as well for their unending support. Stay tuned to ShadowRockZX for all things Mega Man, including when we do test out Legacy Collection 1 on the Switch 2. I'm going to make an edited video about that after the stream. Until then, rock on and have yourselves a wonderful time zone.